Hello there everyone and welcome to April's live stream portrait painting demonstration. So what I'm going to do is upload this video shortly after I finish the demonstration. What we have here is titanium white, burnt umber, alizarin permanent, cadmium red, yellow ochre, sap green, ultramarine blue, and ivory black. And below the screen here I have a little container of my odorless mineral spirit. So I'm going to start off with my umber sketch. This is going to be alla prima style. I'm just using a bristle brush. So if you're wondering why today's video is kind of delayed, it's because I'm going to be uploading the Patreon live, of course, after the live stream is done. The same day that I film it, I kind of realized that the algorithm, well, I think that the YouTube algorithm wasn't giving the video enough priority because I was uploading it a week after that. But in any case, that's my theory with that. So I'm painting a portrait of our model Madeline, whom you've seen plenty of times before. But this just happens to be a photo reference that I haven't used yet. And I think I'm actually going to move the head a little bit higher up. So for those of you that are following me on the Facebook photo reference group, hopefully by the time this video is uploaded, I'm on my tablet and updating the photographs for the Facebook photo reference group. But if you want to see the same photographs that I used, in particular this photograph, I'll definitely make sure to update it like right after I'm done filming this. I know it's been a while. It's been kind of difficult. Situation's been kind of tough on all of us. So now I have the top of the head. It looks like I'm kind of painting some kind of abstract bridge, doesn't it? But in any case, this is the top of the head, and let's say the bottom of the head is going to go about here. And by the way, this is a 8 by 10 inch cotton canvas that I stretched like literally an hour before I started filming, and I toned it with odorless mineral spirits and burnt umber. And I'm just using a microfiber cloth to wipe the paint. I find that I can save paper towel if I used a microfiber cloth. And right now, with the way the situation is, paper towel, any kind of paper products, at least in Maryland, are kind of difficult to come by these days. So you gotta save wherever you can. Now, last week I had a problem with the last month I had a problem with the YouTube app glitching. It ended up playing the footage vertically, even though on my screen it was horizontal. So hopefully this time it doesn't do that, because it doesn't look like any of my patrons are actually watching the stream at this moment, but that's okay. So I'm just working my way around the outside shape. I know I've said that 1,000 times already. Now let's make our way towards the interior shapes. So there's a little corner for the concavity of the eye socket on one side. And it starts off that simple. So for those of you that are wondering about the Patreon live videos, I do a live painting demonstration the first Saturday of every month, and a live chat the first Sunday of every month. And I have a mentor tier as well. So I have a live stream tier, which is what my patrons would be viewing right now. What I do is I send them the link like right before the demo, so that the link doesn't accidentally get shared or anything like that. And then all they need is the link, and then they can view the video as I'm creating it. That's how the live painting demonstration goes. The live chat is the exact same, except for the live chat, I'm just there to answer questions while I'm working on my own studio paintings. And right now I'm just putting in the corner of the nose. This is also the angle that I painted Madeline in when I was teaching my class, my in-person class, and I'm kind of all over the place. That eye socket has to go a little bit higher up, so I'm gonna just simplify. It's kind of hard to multitask. So yeah, that needed to go way up there. And then I'm talking about Patreon. So then after the live chat, I also offer constructive critiques. So it's written in my Patreon description. People can send me, as long as you're in the constructive critique tier, you can send me images directly to my Gmail. And then by the end of the month, I respond with a constructive critique on one of your paintings or drawings. And again, that's all written down in my Patreon account. The instructions for that are all written out for you. But I know times are tough, so if you can't support me on Patreon at the moment, that's perfectly fine. I hope that my videos are still helping you out, especially in these very difficult times. Let's see here. So with the features, I'm going to be careful not to draw too much for the features. I know in the beginning it can look kind of daunting. You know, we're used to seeing human heads that are whole. We're not used to seeing something like this. Is something you'd see out of a scary movie. So it just takes time to get used to seeing an unfinished head and then simplifying it down and breaking it down and making it more and more specific. I'm just kind of unifying all of these dark shapes for now. Okay, so I think that that's pretty good for the basic shape of the model's head. I'm gonna go at this the classical alla prima approach. So let's go ahead and use the microfiber cloth to subtract some of the paint, which it's not doing, and that's okay. Never mind. That just means the paint kind of already was absorbed, or at least the mineral spirits just dissipated already. Okay, that's all good. Now I'm just going to switch brushes. Now we're going to mix up our first little flesh tone. So yellow ochre, titanium white. And for those of you that are drawing or painting along at home, I apologize, the photo reference, I can't really put that there during the live stream, but just go ahead and check out the Facebook photo reference group for some images to paint along with. So I'm not using any medium at this point. Whenever I do use medium, I'll let you know. So we just want to cover the large masses first. And I'm hoping, so yellow ochre, titanium white, cadmium red. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to capture all of the footage of this painting demonstration. I did already film another one that I didn't upload just yet because I wanted to upload this one first. So I kind of have a backup plan in case the app glitches. Let's add a little bit of burnt umber just to neutralize the heat. Again, I don't really need any features just yet. For those of you that have been watching this channel for a long time, you're kind of familiar with this approach. This is the paint like sculpture type approach. In fact, I think I made a video titled Paint Like Sculpture, like, I don't know, 2 years ago now. So we're going to treat the head like a large wig maker's block. So a little bit of a darker tone here for the nose. So we're treating the head like a wig maker's block. And we're painting very, very thick first. And then I'll tell you where we'll go from there. A little bit more sap green. Don't worry about any of the features just yet. And we're going to enter the awkward stage pretty soon. And then we'll leave the awkward stage just as quickly as we enter it. And remember, the awkward stage is just that feeling of uncertainty. Whenever you start a painting, in particular a portrait, and you're not used to what a human head looks like in an unfinished painting. Especially if you spend a long time staring at photographs of people. You know, like if you're a photographer or something. Then this can be quite daunting to look at in this stage. Alizarin Permanent and Sap Green are two colors that were basically made for each other. They make a really nice, neutral, warm flesh tone. Now that I have that, let's go ahead and mix the shadow, or a shadow color. So I'm going to use the drawing brush yet again. Burnt umber, ultramarine blue. I'm going to have to be very careful with this color. In the photo reference, when you see it on the Facebook photo reference group, you'll notice it's rather dark. That's just because the photograph was kind of contrasty. So I'm going to be careful not to make it as dark as like the ivory black. So I'll just throw in yellow ochre just to make sure it's not too dark. So it's like burnt umber, but it's a little cooler. Let me adjust the light here. So hopefully you can see a little better. Oh, I need a hat with this. Okay, just kind of hurts to look at that light. And I want to start off with this angle here. And I want to make sure that the angle for the nose is not centered. The face is nearly centered. It's just a little bit turned, which I think is probably the most difficult angle, when the face is almost perfectly centered but not. I'd rather it sometimes just be centered or be perfectly 3/4. But we work with what we've got. This is one of the last photo references that I have that I didn't use yet for a YouTube video, or at least one of the last usable photo references for YouTube. Let's put it that way. For those of you that follow me on Instagram, you'll notice I've been uploading a lot of figure paintings. I can't really do figure paintings on the YouTube platform. I've had many requests for that recently, but I simply can't because YouTube will demonetize me and probably delete my channel if there's any kind of if you see more than the model's clavicle, YouTube will try to demonetize me, so I have to be very cautious with that. We're taking this one step at a time. I have a feeling that this live stream, since none of my patrons are watching, will go really, really long. Usually with the live chats, when someone is watching them, they can participate, they can talk to me, ask me questions while I'm painting, which makes the demo a little bit more interactive. So as a result, since no one's really watching, this will probably end up being a little longer. Let's cover the dark masses for the hair while we're at it. So alizarin permanent, ivory black. Now I'm going to quickly throw in a background color, just mixing right onto the canvas. So alizarin permanent. I probably shouldn't have thrown the background color just yet. I'm going to be resting my pinky on the corner here, but oh well, we'll be fine. So alizarin permanent and burnt umber for the background color. Now, since this is the same model and the same angle that I did my demonstration for my portrait painting class, and due to the coronavirus, my class was cut short by I think 2 sessions. I'm going to dedicate this to my portrait painting students. So if you're watching, Nora, Scott, Quinn, Buddy, what was your name? Sam. Dedicate this to you guys. Okay, now how about we get into the interior shapes for the face now. As I promised you, we're now in the awkward stage. The awkward stage is pretty real at this stage now in the painting. So, how do we get out of the awkward stage? We don't. We remain in the awkward stage forever. Obviously, I'm kidding. So the purpose for the large shapes of color that we've put in, I'm just putting in the shadow for the forehead because I somehow forgot. The purpose for this stage is to set up a ground that we can build onto. Alright, so now let's switch brushes and let's add another value here into our color value web. So if you're new to this channel, this is the color value web. So it's just a organization of values, lightest to darkest, that's all. So now let's get into these intermediate values. Very much painting like sculpture here. We push that halftone a little more towards the green. I still think the shadow needs to get a little darker on this side. It's not so bad to have a contrasty photograph after all. Kind of makes it easier to see the plane breaks. So I'm just putting in these little intermediate halftones. Adding some volume. Though I don't need to render anything just yet. I'll let you know when I get to that stage. And this is probably the time in the episode where I'm going to be a little bit more quiet. So the way you can watch this video, either use it as a sleeping aid or just keep me as a studio partner. Just have this video play on the side while you're working on your own work, or if you're painting along with me, make sure to check out the photo references on the Facebook photo reference group. Just look up Yupari Artist Facebook photo reference group, and I'll have that linked in the bottom of the description box of this episode. The shadow is way too large below the neck. And push that shadow shape in. Now the eyebrows, I'm going to go ahead and kind of flatten this out near the concavity of the eye socket. The eyebrows are a good telltale sign for the placement of the eye sockets, so I'm going to take that to my advantage. Now this way of painting is a lot of fun up until you get to this point where you're like, what do I do with this now? And now it's really about thinking three-dimensional and building this just like a sculpture. It does complicate drawing a little bit in a linear sense, since you're not really worrying about outlines too much. You're thinking more about planes. So it does complicate that. It's going to be for the bottom of the orbicularis. And this is the side of the orbicularis. That is the structure that contains the mouth, sometimes referred to as the muzzle. You can get a lot of likeness just with the shape of the head itself. See how we're kind of walking our way up towards almost constructing the eyes? Almost there. Need a smaller brush for that shape. It's a little triangle of light beneath here. Plane here for where the philtrum will eventually go. This is a very forgiving technique, I find, if you slow down with it. Don't try to rush it. And stand back as often as possible. Or if you're sitting, sit back as often as possible. As I was telling my students in my portrait painting class, when we're looking into a painting a little too much, it makes it easy for us to miss things that we would otherwise see if we were, standing back more frequently. A tendency is going to be to want to frontalize the nose, so I'm going to do my best to avoid that. If you're new to the term frontalize, frontalize just means like trying to pull something directly centered towards you. So this is my hand centered. This is my hand at an angle. My tendency would be to draw something like, I don't know, like my pointer finger, like it was centered instead of being 3/4. So that's all that means. I'm just trying to make sure that the nose is at a 3/4 angle, just like the rest of the head is. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the accent for the nostril over here first, before I put that one in. And now that we're going to start putting in accents, let's start to put in the dark for the eyebrow. The eyebrows are fairly close. I'm starting off with the eyebrows there just because, as I mentioned before, they really help with locating the placement of the eye sockets. We're thinking about structure, so eye sockets. Another difficult thing about all of this, this whole painting and YouTube business, is trying to figure out how to turn this into something sustainable for me. So I have been wanting to turn these into like online learning resources, but there are so many online ateliers. I don't know how I could compete. I don't have a computer team or anything like that. I used to have a computer person, but I don't now. So I just don't know how I would be able to do that, technologically speaking. But enough rambling. So now we have the corner of the concavity of the eye socket on one side. So I dropped in a little accent there for the kind of the crease where the upper eyelid will meet the frontal area of the eye socket. And right now I'm putting in the shadow for where this, the concavity of the eye socket is in shadow. It's a very descriptive area. So I'm just relating verticals now. You saw that motion. Oh, This is kind of how I relate one point to another. So this is the bottom, a little shadow underneath of the lower lip, resting right on the bottom of the lowermost portion of the orbicularis oris. I realize I have the chin a little too short. So I'm going to get a smaller brush here. Or let's just use the larger brush since we want to since we want to cover, or at least I want to cover much faster here. So we're kind of sneaking up on the outlines. This is a dry brush. Chin definitely doesn't have a sharp angle like that, so I have to make this a little more graceful. So lighter plane right over here. It's a little more believable. And then the corner of the maxilla, or should I just say the maxilla, which is the skeletal region over here, right alongside the cheekbone, the zygomatic bones, which are over here. Maxilla is over here. So we're going to put in a plane here, a very subtle one though, for the maxilla. Very slight. I realize I need a little bit more description up here. You always want the edge around the hairline to be very soft. That wasn't so bad. All right, now we're going to mix black and white. Some flesh tone. We're going to keep that on the side. Switch to a smaller brush. And now things are going to get kind of weird. So we're going to put in the light for the sclera. It's going to look strangely out of place, but trust me, it's a little easier to put in the light for the sclera first, I found. And then put in the dark areas on top of them. It's just a little easier to work this way. Especially if you're working in the ala prima. Is it weird enough? Hopefully that's the weirdest the image is going to look. So now the burnt umber. So I had my my students in my portrait painting class, of course, work from life, and I had them use the classical approach. The classical approach is much more suited for a realistic finish than the Alla Prima approach. This is actually a time where I need to focus a lot, so give me a second here. So I want to make sure that the eyes are lined up properly. So now this is the time to do it or to mess it up. I think now is the time where I'm going to start to use medium. And this is what I'll use, Venetian medium. So I'll explain how I use it in a second. So I have a little bit of the Venetian medium on the brush. See there? Even though it's not focusing, I'm sure you can see. Mix it directly into the paint, and what that does is it helps to thin the paint out without eating through the paint too much, like mineral spirits tends to do. Remember, the thinner paint sticks onto the thicker paint. And since we're painting wet paint directly onto wet paint, we want to make sure that the paint sticks. Now with a smaller brush, a little bit of medium and mineral spirits, alizarin permanent, ivory black. Going to try to draw this even more. A little bit of the red. Now the main triangle is extremely difficult. It's the most difficult thing I think in all of painting. Just trying to get the eyes and the nose to work. At least it's the most difficult thing for me. So even the sclera is going to have light and dark. A little darker over here. let's see here. So I'm kind of struggling with the shape around the eye itself. That is these shapes. So I have to draw them a little better. See how we're kind of sneaking up to the outlines? This is how we work from inside out. That's a little closer. So again, my painting students, if you're watching, I think I forgot to mention Bob's name. Sorry for my memory. So Nora, Bob, Scott, Quinn, Sam. I hope all of you are doing well. Again, my students that I'm giving a shout out to, they were in my class when our model was posing from life, and since everything shut down, we missed the last 2 classes. It was an 8-week course. But at least here in Maryland, everything is kind of on lockdown for, I think, until the end of April, I believe. So I don't think I'll get to have a spring class, unfortunately. But the important thing is that everyone stays safe. Sorry for the rambling. With the eyes, you want to be careful not to paint perfect lemons. So the curve here is a little bit too generic. So I have to now, let's zoom you in here so you can see what I'm talking about. This is too perfect lemon, so I messed that up. So the concavity of the eye socket, or the peak of convexity of the eye socket should be, where is it? Oh geez, it is almost perfect lemon, but it's not. It's a little more flat over here. That tiny little adjustment can mean the difference between painting perfect lemons for the eyes and painting more naturalistic eyes. So you want to follow through on the other side as well. Although it looks like we kind of already did that a little bit over there. Let's get out of close up. So here we are at 50 minutes, 43 seconds, and still no one has attended. None of the patrons on the live demo tier have joined. It's okay, I know everyone's busy. And times are tough. And I'm rambling. Sorry about that again. I'm going to add a little more medium. I love this medium. This is my favorite medium. Venetian medium. The best medium, in my opinion. But that opinion changes from time to time. Now with the nose, again, I'm very cautious with this angle. I don't want this angle to be this. If it's straight, it means I frontalized it, and that's not good. We have to maintain this angle. So now going into the nose, gonna be very cautious with that angle. Do not want to mess that up. So I'm gonna put in this half tone that we need. Careful now with that angle. I know I'm just talking to myself at this point, but trying to be very cautious with that angle. You know, I could probably do this for days. Now that I think about it, rambling a lot. I can ramble for days, huh? What I'm trying to get at is I think I can do more of these demonstrations, especially now with the lockdown. I mean, there are certain studio difficulties, but I think it's possible. Now I'm going to be very careful with the wing of the nose on this side of the canvas. It needs to be smaller than this side to maintain that angle. But I don't want to overdo it either. That's borderline overdoing it, so I have to be very careful with that. There's a very fine line for this. And see how we're walking our way up to the lines? That's the beauty of Alla Prima. Now we're starting to see the lines. And rather than it just being a simple outline, we have shape, value, and color. Try to drop in some of a more reddish color for the darker accents, in particular with the nostril. Start off with this one first. I almost want to have a caliper here. Actually, you know what? I think I have my caliper. Oh, it does pay to have a caliper close to you. So let's talk about this center here. I want to make sure that this is larger than that. See how delicate that is? I want to make sure that this is smaller than this. This is larger than that. And it's such a small window of error. And I checked this distance too. The corner of the nose to the corner of the eye. Very, very delicate stuff. I don't want this to get any further that way. I don't want this to get any further that way. I'm walking a very fine line with the placement of those shapes. And that's how it is with portraiture. Living life on the edge. Whew, very delicate. Now, of course, there's a highlight to the nose, so I'm just cleaning off the brush with the odorless mineral spirits and the microfiber cloth. See how the paint's not sticking? So now I'm going to use the medium. And it's still not sticking. I think I need more paint. More medium. Come on, paint. Work with me. Good. There you go. You probably think I'm going crazy. That moment when you start to talk to the oil paint. Quarantine day number 45. Someone's gonna make a meme out of that eventually. Okay, so now that we have the nose placed in there, now I'm gonna walk down towards the mouth. Switching brushes here. What the? Okay, so that brush just kind of pooped out on me. Thinking it had too much mineral spirits on it. Should dry that brush. So I'm mixing alizarin permanent into the middle tones. A little bit more cadmium red. And with the color of the lips, let's get you a close-up again. Hopefully that's close enough for you. So with the color of the lips, I will draw the lips. So I'm balancing shape, value, color, and placement all at once. So if this gets too high up there, if it gets too close to the nose, then it's going to shrink the distance for the philtrum. And if it goes too far to the left, it's going to take the entire mouth and push it that way, whereas I want it to be centered. So that little divot there needs to move a little tiny bit. See that? Oh, so tiny stuff. But it makes a difference in the big picture. I don't think we talk enough about the small shapes. We're always prioritizing big shapes, but the small shapes matter too. So I'm using the color of the lips to draw, and I want to make sure this doesn't go too far out there. I'm walking a fine line with the placement here. Can go out a little more, but oh man, not any more than that. Now, let's get you over to the palette now that I'm moving quite a lot. So now see how I have a darker area I know you can't see it, but I'm accessing the alizarin permanent. So now I have 2 values, 1, 2, for the lips. Move on over. I want to make sure that shadow agrees with the shape. Walking a fine line there. It takes quite a bit of bravery to push those shapes around. See how we can move things around just like clay. You have to emphasize the C with clay. Clay. We're moving it just like clay. Now, of course, you're going to want some dark accents. So let me show you what I'm going to use for that. Crap. I needed more paint than that. So I just took in a little more paint. Some of the dark accents. Infinitesimal. Almost nothing. Almost nothing. And at a distance, should read decent. And after zooming back, whoa. Yeah, the forehead. Let's talk about the thirds. This should be this. Okay, that's close. Should be this. Am I losing it? So this is the thirds, okay, if you don't know about the thirds. Hairline, eyebrow, bottom nose, bottom chin are the thirds. Well, I guess it makes sense, but it looks a little off. So, you know the old saying, if it looks wrong, this comes from my friend Karen Warshall, if it looks wrong, it's probably wrong. And if it looks right, it's probably wrong. Is that how the saying goes for portraiture? Such an optimistic view. But in any case, let's get serious. I'm moving the hairline down. That's all I'm doing. It was just my feeling that it needed to move down. I didn't measure the photo reference. I'm not using any measurements at all for this. And that's the way I like to paint. I like to keep it spontaneous and fun. Now we'll just get a clean brush. Make this edge soft. Oh dear, definitely messed up the shape of the forehead. So, let's correct our mistake here. Oh dear. So a little bit of the sap green into this area. Now that color looks like a bruise. So I need to make it a little warmer with the alizarin permanent. If you paint something too greenish for the flesh tone, it kind of will look like a bruise. So you gotta be careful with that. See, portraiture has its It has its things that make it very, very difficult, meaning that, the accuracy of the drawing, the color, making sure it doesn't look like a bruise, um, making sure the flesh tones don't look undead. Like if they're too cold, then it might look like a zombie. Um, it has its things, but you'll notice patterns from portrait to portrait. Obviously, people have different flesh tones, skin complexions, surface texture, and things like that. But in general, these kind of rules apply to everyone. You don't want to paint the sclera, like the white of the eye, too pink or too yellow. Now, what am I neglecting? I'm neglecting this area around the mouth. So after I move the forehead down a little, and now, crap, I messed up. I want to go to this, but let me address the hair first. So let's switch brushes here. I hate introducing a new brush because it means I have to clean it. Laziness, I know. Looks like I might run out of my lizard permanent. I'm just trying to cover this little glow. I don't know why I painted that. Just gonna make the background color meet the hair to avoid that little glow, artificial glow that I had there. And now with the same brush, gonna go back in, paint the dark for the hair. It's kind of an odd feeling knowing that somewhere around the world someone's probably upset with me because the video is going to be uploaded a little late, but doing the best I can. Purposefully leaving this area light because she does have a highlight, if that's what you call it, area of her hair that's painted. Something's not right there. That's really bothering me. I'm gonna get to that soon. So it's actually painted kind of a bluish color, purplish. I think it's purple. Alizarin and ultra marine blue. Gonna switch brushes in a minute here. There's also some of that light back here. If the brush can make a mark, I still keep it. This brush is pretty used up. Alright, that should be all I need for the hair for now. Now let's get to the mouth. Something's bothering me with the mouth. I'm gonna have to sit back. No, it's not the mouth. It's the width of the face that's bothering me. Oh yeah, definitely the width was a thing. Oh yeah, definitely. And I don't think I noticed that because, again, I'm painting and I'm sitting down. So I haven't been able to sit back far enough. Whoa, big mistake there. Big mistake. Mistakes happen. Think of a mistake as a stepping stone to success. In portraiture, we don't have happy little accidents. We have mistakes. That's a little closer. It's a little better. But again, the lips are still bothering me, so I think it has something to do with this edge. When in doubt, blur it out. So I'm going to make that softer. And this edge as well needs to be refined now a little bit. And then when I get back to this area, I'm going to address the chin a little more. Definitely the chin. So I'm going to use the shapes for the neck to help address the chin. See how everything's kind of connected? I'm moving that up. It's a little bit of reflected light underneath of the chin, and it would almost look a little unnatural if I completely ignored the reflected light. I usually tell my students to avoid the reflected light, or at least use a color change and not a value change. So what I'm going to do is use a color change. So I'm going to make it kind of orangey, but I'm going to try to keep the value about the same. Oh, that chin is causing me some issues. Let's see, I'm going to switch brushes again. Gonna let this actually go out a little bit. And then Gonna just cut back into it. Got a little painterly trick there. So we gotta have something for the neck. It would look a little unnaturalistic if I just had a floating head. Okay, all right, so now I'm gonna sit back again. I think I've figured out what was bothering me with the mouth. So let's test this out. So a little bit of alizarin permanent, pretty much the background color, but I think a little darker. Let's test this theory out. I forgot the shadow underneath the mouth. Hopefully that makes it a little more volumetric. And I'm also missing the shadow up here. Is it in shadow? It's kind of hard to tell. It's darker, at least. This should be darker than that. So I'll get you in a close-up so you can see what I'm talking about. So that needed to be a little darker than that, but of course not as dark as the bottom. Let's zoom out now. Okay, so now that we're zoomed out, still something with the mouth. Well, I think I'm going to add the highlights for the mouth now so that they're not completely opaque. So a little bit of flesh tone, some cadmium red, titanium white, and a little bit of medium. Needs a little more white. And so now I'm going to start to paint the shapes underneath the mouth. I think that's what it was. Now that I'm starting to see more of the structures. Let's address this shape. It's a little bit too cold. Almost looks like a bruise. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This area over here was a little too cold. So I think that's making a little more sense. And now that's not reading too well. So when in doubt, blur it out, or in this case, figure it out. I think it just needs to be a little darker over here to make sense. Oh, crap. It's a little better. Now, of course, how could I forget? There should be a little more warmth here on the cheek. So, running out of brushes. Let's use this one. Now, this would be done best if I were to use a glaze, but just a tiny color change here. So with the cheekbones, zygomatic area, I try to use a color change to help describe the shape of the cheekbone rather than a value change. If I use too much of a value change here, though, I will make it a little darker, but not much. If I make it too dark over here, it'll look like, she was like punched, like someone punched her on the side there. So I have to be very cautious with that. Like that. That was a mistake. See, that's a problem. Gonna just use the oldest trick in the book to correct that. Okay, so now I'm missing a little bit of the hair on that corner. I know it's not a big thing, but still something I don't want to forget. Yeah, I'm gonna have to add more alizarin in a second here. Alright, now I'm gonna stand up, get some alizarin. If you hear my bones cracking, sorry. My bones. Yeah, it's kind of difficult to sit for, what has it been now, 87 minutes? Since I did all that work to get that color, I might as well use it for something. The edge. This edge is too sharp. You want to be very cautious with edges. I don't want to make the edge too same everywhere. So watch out for same edges. Same edges are lame edges. Just made that up. So you just want to be careful not to paint too much of the same quality of edge. See, I'm kind of guilty of that over here. I need to do something there. So for that edge, I kind of needed to mix an intermediate value for that. So I'm going to leave that be. Let's see, where else am I messing up? Side of her forehead's a little swollen there. It needs to be a little more flat like that. So let's get the old paintbrush. Very tiny things. So I usually tell my portrait painting and drawing students, portraiture is the story of how a bunch of little things either made my day or ruined my day. So I have to be very cautious now with all of these little changes. Now I'm just sitting back and thinking. Now there's some things that you just can't quite address everything. So I think for the face, it's pretty much there. It's just this is starting to become an eyesore. So I'm gonna develop the neck a little bit more. So I'm gonna use the tone of the canvas to help me out with that. So let's make a half tone for over here. Now her shirt is cropped like just below the frame of the canvas, so I'm gonna have to figure out how that will read. It may just look like she's not wearing a shirt, so I have to be careful with the cropping. Or at the very least, just not make it that realistic. Just leave it to vignette down here. I think that's the direction I'll go in. Now that I have the clavicle, suprasternal notch, and the sternocleidomastoid here, I'm gonna just sit back and adjust something. Let's adjust here. You want to watch out for this 90-degree angles. So it was a little too close to 90. So I'm gonna make it softer, a little more graceful. Throw in a little halftone here. Now it's really apparent that I need to put in more definition here. I'll sit back. It reads a little better. Her jaw is a little more round than what I have placed. Whoops. Gonna get a clean synthetic brush. Just make the jaw a little more round there. I'm gonna sit back. I think we're almost there. I'm gonna give the background a second thought. I think this edge now needs some addressing. And at the same time, I'm gonna make the background a little less red. I'm gonna bring down the chroma a little bit. That's a little easier on the eyes now, that edge. So I think I've pretty much said all that I wanted to say for this demonstration. Again, Alaprima is not supposed to yield too much of a realistic result. If you're interested in seeing the other artworks that I'm working on off camera, in particular the figurative work I've been working on, go ahead and check out my Instagram account, which will be linked in the bottom of this video. I really hope that this episode helps you out. Remember, this was the live demonstration for the month of April. Remember, I do live painting demos the first Saturday of every month and live chats the first Sunday of every month, and I do monthly mentor tier critiques for my patrons on Patreon. That being said, if you would like to see more videos like this one, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. As I mentioned before, if you would like to support me even more, I have a Patreon account. I really hope that all of you are staying as safe as you possibly can during these difficult times. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you on the next one.